John Sheehan has been the General Manager of Yalouk Estate, a 5,600 hectare mixed grazing and cropping property situated 13 kilometres south of Balan.
Serrated tussock was first observed into this area in about 82, probably identified in large quantities there after the 82 drought, and believed to be in the Brisbane Ranges prior to that. Tussock is the perfect opportunist. It loves unarable country, rocky outcrops, overgrazed country, poor pasture establishment. Tussock was just living comfortably with the silver tussock and not considered a significant weed, and certainly not noticeable in the pasture mix at all. It wasn't a problem in the first year. It became a problem over the next 10 years. And it wasn't until sort of the mid-90s that we really started to gain some upper hand on the issues that it was causing. But in that time, it had basically dominated most of the landscapes in this area. And from a lot of our management choices over that period, using chemicals like Roundup and burning, were basically removing any habitat, any competitive habitat, and just compounding the problem. It took over 5,000 acres of grazable country off the property, down to the point of less than 1 DSC a hectare. A small mob of wethers would basically was all we could actually graze in that country, and less than one animal per hectare. Serrated tussock has less than 30% digestibility, so basically it's an animal will starve in trying to consume tussock. They use more energy than they can gain from it, and yeah, it's almost impossible to use it as a feed source. Using what we refer to as our sort of 7-year management strategy. So in year 1 we were putting out a knockdown and flupropionate. So the spring of the first year we're putting out a knockdown, coming back in the autumn of the next year and actually burning all that dead matter out of the gorge, just so we could have accessibility and see what we're up against. And then establishing that perennial pasture, which is our biggest weapon against tussock. We increased our carrying capacity from over 7,000 ewes up to about 15,000 ewes over a 4 to 5 year period. And this was purely by bringing this gorge country back from less than 1 DSC up to sort of 8 to 10 DSC. Alongside the perennial pasture program, the gorge development, we were establishing a lot of forestry, a lot of biodiversity and farm forestry, and probably put in the order of 700,000 trees in the last, 10 years. When we had 5,000 acres of gorge country heavily infested with tussock, it was such a liability on the business, economically, and ability for the farm to actually grow and perform. And every decision, even today, every decision I make has relevance to serrated tussock management. But back then, we couldn't make any real positive moves without tackling this liability on the business. Without question, we've basically bought back the farm. We could have went elsewhere and paid the same money and bought the neighbour, but in reality, we still had this liability. We still had this compliance problem. It's a noxious weed, so therefore you're obligated to manage it, and so you've got to find ways of managing it as well as trying to develop a business model around it. One of the limitations to serrated tussock was the economics, having the money to do it. So back in the early, 2000, maybe 98, when raised bed cropping became a new technology in this area, and we started to shift towards a lot of high input cropping, which freed up a bit of country. We moved from merinos to crossbreds, and then we started to be able to generate some income, which we started to put back into the development of some of that steeper gorge country. When it comes to tussock, it's all about being well aware of its existence. It will always have tussock for never and a day, and there's always a constant management program in place to prevent seed set and to prevent any reinfestation of any new pastures or even old pastures for that matter. You can't just spray the weed and expect the problem to go away. You've got to develop it into a management system.